All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to now get into talking about the Buccaneers Saints game from yesterday. And it was a wild game. It was a wild game. The Buccaneers, they went up 17-0, right? And, they had Spencer Rattler, fifth round rookie draft pick, starting for Derek Carr, because Derek Carr got hurt in the game against the Chiefs, and he hurt his oblique. So he's going to be out multiple games. And the Buccaneers, they jumped out, like I said, to a 17-0 lead. And I thought, well, this game's going to be a blowout. Well, it still ended up being a blowout. But then all of a sudden, the Saints, they start to come back into this game. So, yeah, it was the Buccaneers, they went right down the field on their first drive. Baker Mayfield connects with Chris Godwin for a 4-yard touchdown. Then there was a fumble in this game, on this drive. Rattler connected with Chris Olave, who ended up fumbling, and he ended up leaving the game with a concussion. And Antoine Winfield Jr. Returned it for 58 yards. So that made it 14-0. Then the Buccaneers put together a field goal drive. So, yeah, it was 17-0. Saints, they put up points. A 42-yard field goal by Groupie to make it, like I said, 17-3. Then the Bucs punted. But Rashid Shaheed took back that punt for a touchdown, a 54-yard punt return. So, yeah, that made it 17-10. And then Baker Mayfield just started throwing interceptions. Threw one on the Bucs next drive. Saints turned that into a field goal. Then Baker threw a pick again. Saints turned that into a touchdown. A Rattler connected with Means for a 10-yard touchdown. Then the Bucs answered. Had Ryan Miller, a 39-yard reception. And then Baker later to Sean Tucker, who had a big game. There was no Rashad White in this game. Sean Tucker had a big game. A 36-yard touchdown reception by Sean Tucker to make it 24-20. Then the Saints, they responded. 41-yard pass play. Rattler connected with Foster Moreau. And then Kamara from 4 yards out scored a touchdown to make it 27-24. Then Baker throws another pick, but the Saints punted. And that was the score at the half. So after all that, the Saints were winning this game. And then they did not score again after that. Both teams exchanged punts. Bucs finally put together a touchdown drive. Baker Mayfield connected with Chris Godwin for a 55-yard touchdown. And it was one of those plays where, I saw Baker connect with Chris Godwin. I'm like, all right, they got a first down or whatever. And then Godwin just did not get tackled. And he ended up scoring. Bucs went up. Rattler threw another pick. The Bucs turned that into a touchdown. Baker connected with Cade Otton. They went for two, didn't get it. Saints punted again. The Bucs scored yet another touchdown. Bucky Irving from 1 yard out to make it 44-27. Rattler threw another pick, and the Bucs scored again. Sean Tucker had a 36-yard run, and then he had a 5-yard touchdown run later in that drive. So final score, 51-27. Baker Mayfield, a mixed bag, 24-36, 325 yards, 4 touchdowns, but he also did have 3 interceptions. The Bucs ran the ball for almost 300 yards in this game. Sean Tucker, 136 rushing yards and a touchdown. Bucky Irving had 81 yards and a touchdown. Sterling Shepard had 31 rushing yards. Baker Mayfield at 29. Chris Godwin continues to have a great season. 11 receptions for 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sean Tucker, 3 for 56 and a touchdown. Ryan Miller, 1 for 39. Mike Evans was quiet. Usually against the Saints, he doesn't go off. He only had 2 for 34. He was a little banged up in this game also. And then there were 5 sacks in the game by the Bucs defense. So, yeah, it was, again, if Baker doesn't turn the ball over, this, the Saints might have put up maybe, 10, 13 points. Spencer Rattler, 22 of 40, 243 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. Alvin Kamara, 13 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. Foster Moreau was their leading receiver. He had 2 for 54. Juwan Johnson, their other tight end, 3 for 48. No Taysom Hill in this game. Like I said, Olave got hurt. Cameron Jordan had an interception in this game for the Saints. But yeah, Saints had 3 picks off of Baker, and they only had 1 sack, their defense. So the Saints, after starting off the year 2-0, they are now 2-4. And they take on the Broncos on Thursday. Sean Payton will be making his return for the first time. Their former head coach. Again, very weird game. I mean, there's a lot of positives you could take away from it if you're the Bucs. I mean, there was no Rashad White, but Sean Tucker, that's another running back, another weapon. Now with what he was able to do yesterday, Bucky Irvin continues to run the football well. It was funny watching the game yesterday, and you just see him with the number 7. You think of Leonard Fournette, a young Leonard Fournette, but the ground game very effective, and that's what they should have stuck to when they were up 17-0. But with Baker Mayfield, you're going to be airing it out, and it's just unfortunately for him, he could have costed his team the game, but that was not the case. I mean, the score at the half, you would have thought it was the final score of the game, and the Saints scored all of their points in the second quarter. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. All their points were scored in the second quarter, and then they didn't score after that. So, but you know what? The Bucs were able to get the win. And this game was very important because looking at the Bucs' schedule coming up, they have the Ravens next week. Then they have the Falcons at home. Then they have the Chiefs. They got to go to Arrowhead. And then they got the 49ers at home. That is a brutal stretch coming up. That's why losing that game last week to the Falcons, that was tough. Because at least, if you're 5-1, okay, you could afford to lose some of these games. But I mean, I don't think the Bucs are going to go winless with what they have coming up on their schedule. I think they win. I'm going to say they win at least one of those games. So that gives you 5 wins, and then if you lose to the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the 49ers, you're at 500. But then when you come out of the bye, you're at the Giants, you're at the Panthers, home against the Raiders, at the Chargers, at the Cowboys, home against the Panthers, home against the Saints. So really after that stretch from week 7 to week 10, then they could get back on track. But let's see what they do. I mean, I don't think the Bucs are a pushover by any means. They did go on the road and beat the Lions this year. So it's not like they haven't beaten anybody. And playing in New Orleans is a tough place to play. But yeah, so this was very important that they won this game. But yeah, it's one of those things though, like that little blip that Baker Mayfield had during the game. That's what I worry about against some of these better teams. And I don't think it's gonna happen. But you also did see the Bucs last year. They got off to a good start, and then in the middle of the season they struggled. And now you're getting to that point in the middle of the season, and you got 4 tough games coming up. So is it going to be like last year where you go on that losing streak, or are you going to say no, that's not happening, and you're going to win some of these games? Like I said, I think they win at least one of them. But they got the Ravens at home, they got the Niners at home, and the Niners haven't been great this year. The Falcons, they got at home. I think maybe they get revenge for that game last week. And then the Chiefs and Arrowhead is, it's going to be tough. But, Baker knows how to play in that stadium. The Browns, when he was with the Browns, they almost won that playoff game. And then they had that week 1 matchup the following year, which they almost won as well. But, again, almost doesn't really count. So, yeah, and then after that, you got the schedule kind of softens up. And then for the Saints, I mean, look, after the first 2 weeks, you thought like, okay, maybe the Saints got something going this year. And it's just, that was not the case. I mean, that's kind of evaporated pretty quickly. And now with Derek Carr being out, I mean, this season's going to continue to spiral and not in the Saints' favor. So, unfortunately for them, I mean, the Panthers, they continue to lose games. So, the Saints right now are in 3rd place. Right now, you got the Buccaneers and the Falcons. Those are the top 2 teams in the division. And that's going to make the game in a couple weeks huge. Because the Falcons won again yesterday. So, yeah, right now, that looks like what the division is coming down to, is between those 2 teams. But, you got to like the Bucs rushing attack. You get Rashad White back. I mean, you got him. You got Bucky Irving. And then now Sean Tucker. Chris Godwin continues to have a good year. Mike Evans was quiet, but, he's going to have big games coming up. Cade Otton has been decent for them these last couple weeks. And Baker continues to... Well, he played well at certain points, but overall, his overall game, you give him maybe like a B-, C+, just because of the turnovers. The turnovers were bad. But you know what? Still threw for over 300 yards, had 4 touchdowns. So, it kind of evened out a little bit. And the team got the win. So, the defense, I think, is probably the bigger concern. It's nice to see that Antoine Winfield Jr. was back. So, once they get guys healthy on the defensive side of the ball, then the defense will hopefully be, at full strength and they'll be playing better. But and they're going to need them against these better teams that they got coming up on the schedule. So, but listen, you'll take these divisional games. These games are huge. Again, they already lost to the Falcons, but you beat the Saints on the road. I know with a rookie quarterback, but still, you take those and you go from there. So, but yeah, very weird game. Buccaneers were still able to pick up the win. And again, got a huge game next week against the Ravens, so we'll see how that goes. But let me know what you guys think about this game. What were your takeaways from it? Let me know. Saints dropped to 2-4. Bucs, they improved to 4-2 on the season. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about another rookie quarterback. We'll talk about Drake May and his debut. We'll talk about the Texans-Patriots game as a whole, how that game went down, and, how Drake May looked. Is it encouraging signs? What's the assessment? We'll get into all that when we come back from our next break. And then after that, we'll preview the game for tonight between the Jets and the Bills, and then that'll wrap up the show for the day. All right, so that is what we will take a break now. So, once again, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.